Hello and welcome to all in attendance today. And I want to first note this presentation method is very convenient for both myself and for all of you that will be learning today. And today my main goal is I want to enlighten you on a topic that's very close to my own professional career and I'm sure is very close to yours. And it's the idea of budgets in the workplace. And we all know the stress of compiling a budget and the countless hours we all spend working to put them together. However, what if I told you that there was an alternative method that could be used which is more productive, right? It sounds interesting. So my goal today is to share with you that idea from which I gathered in an article titled Who Needs Budgets by Jeremy Hope and Robin Fraser. And I will first begin with the history of budgets in the workplace and then their downfall in the workplace. And then I'll move into alternative methods. And this presentation should wrap up in around 5 to 7 minutes, so if you have to go to the bathroom or step out, I encourage you to do so after this presentation so you don't miss out on any of this material that could drastically change your workplace. As promised, I want to begin with a history of budgets in the workplace. So beginning in the 1920s, executives at large organizations like DuPont knew they needed measures that would help them manage costs and cash flows. As a result, they created budgets, which were vast compilations of forecasts and predictions, expenditures, and ultimately just vast amounts of time spent. These budgets were used as a goal. They can be used for goals, like for a sales team that has a sales quota they have to meet, as an example, or as a restriction, like the use of a budget with expenses, also with a sales staff where they have to keep their expenses within a certain amount, and those types of things would be budgeted. But over time, these budgets evolved into something less of a management of cash flows, and instead of something that, as the article put it, a technique that was used to dictate the actions of people at all levels within the company. And the moment this budgeting system turned from a cash flow management tool to a technique to dictate actions, the use of budgets began to be questioned a little bit. And it wasn't until about the 1960s that these budgets started to evolve into more of a performance contract instead. And so you have about 40 years there of budgets coming to fruition and the business world growing. So next I want to move into the downfall of budgets. So as more and more companies begin to adopt the use of budgets within their company, and the effectiveness of them diminished drastically. Corporations that had rigid adherence to the budgets were stifling innovation and were not as responsive to shareholders and investors. And this is where a lot of ethical scandals begin to arise. Pressures from shareholders, placed on the management, leads management to place pressures on their employees to cut corners to meet these budget goals or forecasts. And this is where some of those ethical scandals begin to arise. It was reported that WorldCom was forcing its employees to come in 2% shy of budgets, and we all know how this played out for WorldCom, and it led to one of the biggest fraud scandals that the world had seen at that point. And not to mention that the time being spent creating these budgets, it was a complete waste. The article just states that despite the capabilities of computers, drafting budgets wastes nearly about 30% of management's time. And typically, the budget process begins close to 4 months prior to the beginning of the fiscal year, which means that corporations only have about 8 months to actually focus on the customers. And that's less than 70% of the year that the focus is towards the consumer, and instead, the rest of the time is spent in the meeting rooms, crafting these budgets. And this is, a common belief throughout the organization from both management and even financial management that's, time is being wasted in crafting these budgets. So this led to the kind of the downfall of budgets from being more of a management tool for cash flow to then kind of using it as a way to stifle employees and things of that nature. So instead, I want to try to focus on the new budget, which is about performance measurement. So instead of the focus being on annual fixed targets, businesses shift their focus to performance measurements that are benchmarked against their peers and industry standards. This is a more effective way of measurement. People are more free to make mistakes and they're free to fix them as well. Managers have a wide range to make decisions, and as a result, the spend it or lose it mentality with other budgets is lost. And so gone are the days of pushing off sales to the next month once the goal is reached, or forcing customers to buy items this month that will ultimately be returned just to meet a number, so to speak. So focus returns to the customer by doing so. There's no fear of failure within the organization. And that is not to say that the key performance indicators that are being measured don't hold employees to high standards. However, now acceptable ranges are given that each unit knows it must be within. So, this unit knows that they have a range within their key performance indicator, typically a ratio of something like that they must fall within, and it allows them to continuously improve and strive for that instead of trying to reach a goal on a budget. And many companies have begun to switch from traditional budget systems to new performance measurement systems. And I will speak notably of two organizations that were included within the article. The first of which being Svenska Handelsbanken. Excuse me if I mispronounce the name a little bit there, but they're Scandinavian financing firm that decided to switch to a performance measurement system from a typical budget system. So since the switch to a performance measurement systems in the 70s, this organization has outperformed its competitors in nearly every measure. Between 1979 and 2001, the organization reported a shareholder return which was 33% higher than its nearest competitor. And this success was new to Svenska, as it was losing customers to smaller competitors all throughout the 60s before they made the switch to a performance measurement system. The second company I'll speak of is Ahlsell, which was a Swedish wholesaler who made the switch in 1995, and also experienced severe business slowdown in the early 1990s, and they only had about 14 locations remaining. And then the CEO decided at that time that money could be saved by making the switch, and now the organization has grown to over 200 locations. So this is just two examples of success with the switch to the new budget, so to speak, and there's plenty more where those came from. And this is not the only alternative to a typical budget, switching to a performance measurement system. Companies could also choose to adopt rolling forecasts, which are another alternative. And rolling forecasts are created every 3 months or so, give or take, and as a result allows for quicker, more accurate responses to market conditions. These forecasts also look at the same distance into the future, which is usually 5 to 8 quarters ahead. And while continuously, editing these forecasts or continuously looking at the same amount of time in the future, it creates no finish line like a typical budget does at the end of a fiscal year. Which means with these rolling forecasts, there's no reasons for employees to fix the numbers, because there's no number they're trying to reach, because the finish line is always kind of moving ahead at the same pace. So rolling forecasts are another great option, and they're also not as detailed as typical budgets, which means they're quicker to compile and things of that nature. They only include a few key measurements that really matter to the firm, instead of being super detailed in a lot of items that aren't necessarily included and don't need to be reported every so often, things of that nature. So rolling forecasts are another item to use as an alternative to typical budgets. So I want to wrap up and state that the business world is rapidly changing, and the budgets have remained in place since the 20s. And if you walked into a car dealership to buy a new car and all they had in there were vehicles used in the 1920s, you wouldn't be very happy. So why is your organization any different than this? Typical budgets are outdated and not successful. So switching to performance measurements systems or rolling forecasts empower your organization and the people within it to succeed, instead of empowering employees to cut corners and meet quotas. Many other companies out there have started to make this switch, and I encourage that you should too. Thanks everyone for taking the time, and I will look forward to meeting with you again in the future. Bye.